Okay. Great. Okay, I think that's everybody for now, and we can get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are zooming in to this week's PaleoPerk seminar. This week, we are very excited to have Miranta Kouvari joining us from University College London, and she'll be talking about the South American climate and the Andes and how they influence EUTHERIAN mammal diversity through time and latitudes. Before we get started, just a few quick an introduction of the seminars if you have not been here before. We are currently going over the welcome and announcements, which will be followed by Miranta's talk, which will be approximately 30 minutes. Following that, we will have around a 10-minute moderated question and answer session. And then after that, we'll have an informal tea time with the speaker. Miranta has agreed to stick around, so this is we encourage students, early career researcher and postdocs to attend. It's sort of like an informal setting, and if there are questions that weren't answered during the moderated question and answers, those can be asked and answered then. Don't forget to send your questions via chat to the questions PaleoPerk's host, who today is Rehmat. We are very excited to announce that we have a new financial supporter, and we are getting funding from the Linnean Society of London. So that's super exciting. A little bit of housekeeping. Please make sure that you abide by our codes of conduct during today's seminar. You should be muted. For some reason, if you find yourself to be unmuted, please mute yourself so Miranta can give a uninterrupted seminar. Any questions or any technical issues that you have, they should all go to questions at PaleoPerk's host. And if you do want to ask a question yourself, you can use the raise hand function and we will unmute you, and then you can ask your question to Miranta. We also have closed captions built into Zoom. You can use the CC button to show or hide them. Please nominate any outstanding early career researcher that you know. The link for that, for the nomination, will be found in the Zoom chat very shortly. And there'll be another link talking about weekly feedback, which is completely anonymous and it's optional, but we highly encourage people to fill that out. It should just take a few minutes. And with that, a little bit of introduction on Miranta. She did her Bachelor's of Science in Geology from Greece, followed by a Master's of Science in Paleobiology from France. And she's currently doing her MPhil at the University College London and the Natural History Museum in London. And with that, Miranta, if you would like to take over screen share.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. And you can hear me? Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining for my talk. My name is Miranta Kouvari. My pronouns are she, her. I am Greek. I don't know how the caption software will work, but usually caption software have a difficulty understanding non-English speakers. So sorry in advance if that's the case, but we'll see. Anyway, in this talk, I'm going to be talking about the research I've done during my PhD/MPhil. And I'm based in the University College London and the Natural History Museum. Let me see. Okay. My research focuses on South America, and it's about climate, like temperature and precipitation, as well as the Andes Mountains. We'll be looking at how these influence the diversity of eutherian mammals. Eutherians are the group that includes placental mammals, so us included. This is most mammals today, except marsupials, like kangaroos, so the ones that have a pouch, and monotremes, which is only the platypus and the echidna today. And then we'll be looking at diversity patterns throughout the Cenozoic era, so the last 66 million years, as well as through latitude. This is also a talk about how I realized illustrating research. I like illustrating research so much more than actually doing the research. So let's start with that. we've already, I guess, mentioned it, but my academic journey started in Athens, Greece, where I did my bachelor in geology. And this was followed by a master in paleobiology in France. And then I moved right away to London, UK, where I am now, to do my PhD. I was sure I had it all figured out. I always wanted to be a researcher, and I loved paleontology and museums and science in general. So I thought I had it all figured out. I was even joking that, looking at my trajectory, it's safe to say I will end up like in Ireland or Iceland for postdocs, etc. However, during my PhD, I realized that I was becoming miserable. So a month ago, I think around the time that the PaleoPerks committee reached out to me, I decided to switch my PhD to an MPhil. So actually, I sent my MPhil thesis last week, and today is my last official day as a paid PhD/MPhil student. So yay. So I realized that while I absolutely love paleontology and science, I absolutely hate doing research. The hours of staring at data and writing scripts for analysis, I'm unsure they work or that they are the right ones for my data. And doing this in order to publish papers that are judged by people that can choose to be anonymous and they can be mean. And that my career will be judged based on the number of papers I published. Coupled with the constant financial instability and having to move all the time for postdocs. I mean, I've already moved a lot. I'm tired. Anyway, all of this was killing me, and it was killing my passion for science and paleontology. So I also realized that the thing I absolutely love and I'm passionate about is illustrating science. I realized I have been doing this throughout my career, and it has been the highlight. Illustrating science isn't really a more stable job, but it still gets me to be around science. And most importantly, it gets me to work on something that I love and I'm good at. So it was a difficult decision to let academia go, but yeah, because I did spend all my adult years in it and thinking that this is for me. But no job is worth killing your mental health, so I'm not looking back. And yeah. So I am a scientific illustrator now, I guess. I work on a variety of things like video graphical abstracts, illustrations for outreach, anatomical drawings, and like websites and logos for our packages, conferences, etc. Like making banners for like science stalls in music festivals, or logos, posters, cheat sheets for our packages like the Paleoverse, but I will mention the Paleoverse again in the end. Or figures and graphical abstracts for public and video and images for publications. Actually, I'm very excited about this one. It might be coming out this week. So look out on Twitter. We'll be posting about the paper and the graphical abstracts. But anyway, you're here for the research. So let's get back to it. Hope you enjoy the talk for the science or for the cute illustrations, or just stay until the end because Bilbo, my dog, might be joining in the end. This is the backstage of how this presentation was made, by the way. And let's get back to the science. So climate change is happening, and we can see its effect on animals and plants around the world. We expect further global warming of 2 to 5 degrees in the next century. So the prediction of how species are going to be affected is critical. Although responses can be modeled, only the fossil record provides us with empirical evidence of this relation through time. Climate hasn't been stable throughout the Cenozoic. Until the mid-Eocene, climate has been warm, with a peak in the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PETM. This was followed by climate cooling and habitat aridification towards the recent, and the presence of glacial and interglacial periods in the Pliocene, but most importantly, the Pleistocene. We went from a greenhouse world to an icehouse world, with the formation of permanent ice sheets in both the poles. The world's geography has been changing throughout the Cenozoic as well. Following the Pangaean breakup, the continents were drifting apart towards the present-day position. And during that time, we had the appearance of the present-day latitudinal biodiversity gradient, or LBG, according to which diversity increases towards the equator. Most animals and plants follow a latitudinal biodiversity gradient today, but this pattern was not always present. In fact, Manion et al. Have suggested it first appeared around the Oligocene, but Marco et al., focusing on North American mammals, found out it first appeared in North America in the Pliocene. Here, we investigate the first appearance of this pattern in South America. So South America has one of the biggest diversity hotspots today. So it's like the very red blob near the Amazon. However, South America is one of the most affected continents by the present day climate change. Most species show population declines over the last 5 decades. The continent has an exceptional geobiological history, which includes the formation and uplift of the Andes, one of the longest mountain chains in the world, expanding from the northern to the southern parts of the continent. South America has also been isolated for around 55 million years. This started with the separation of South America from North America in the start of the Cenozoic, where most EUTHERIAN mammal groups arrived to the continent from the north. This is also called the First American Biotic Interchange, or FABI. In the Eocene, South America got isolated from Antarctica as well, because before that, South America, Antarctica, and Australia were connected. This long isolation ended with the formation of the Isthmus of Panama around the Pliocene, reconnecting South America with North America once more, and the Great American Biotic Interchange, or GABI, took place then, with North America faunas settling in South America and becoming part of the fauna we know today, like llamas and alpacas. The continent's long isolation resulted in the evolution of a unique and endemic fauna. This included animals like terror birds, the main predators, metatherian or marsupial saber-toothed cats, and caimanins and gavialoids. But as I said in this talk, I focus on EUTHERIAN mammals in South America. So we had xenarthrans, including folivora, aka sloths, including giant ones from the Pleistocene, vermilingua, aka anteaters, and cingulata, the group that includes armadillos and glyptodons. The glyptodons were like from small to big, and they had a carapace, and some of them were even armored. We also have the South American native ungulates, or sanus, none of which survive today. These included unique ungulate forms, some of which were more adapted to running fast, or others might have had a semi-aquatic way of life. But during the end of the Paleogene, 2 groups reached South America, potentially from Africa via rafting: caveomorph rodents, including today's capybaras, and platyrrhine monkeys. So in this talk, I focus on 2 main questions. What drove diversity changes throughout the Cenozoic era? And when did the present-day latitudinal biodiversity gradient first appear in the continent? So now I will talk about the different data and analysis I have done, and these are just a small part of the analysis I have been doing in the last years. They will probably end up in an essay somewhere. But anyway, let's get started. So me and my colleagues have built a comprehensive data set by extracting information on the taxonomy, age, location of fossils from papers and enter them in the Paleobiology database, or PBDB. The Paleobiology database is an open source database where people can enter data that everyone can download, update, and use. In the database, each fossil occurrence has an age coming from the locality or collection that it has been found in, as well as specific coordinates and paleo coordinates. All this information are also linked with the relevant paper or papers. The PBDB has fossil occurrences of all kinds of animals and plants. Some are more comprehensive than others, but if you haven't checked it out yet, I fully encourage you to do so. It's like an amazing resource. In my case, I spent a lot of my time entering data in the PBDB, as well as cleaning and updating the dataset. I also had to bin my occurrences into time bins, and I used stage-level time bins, except for the Pleistocene, where I took it as a whole bin. However, this also proved a bit tricky. The long isolation and unique geological history of South America, as well as the unique evolution of endemic faunas and floras, has made it difficult to correlate South American biostratigraphy with that of the rest of the world. For within South America, the high endemicity of those faunas, especially eutherian mammals, has proven useful for biostratigraphic correlations within the continent. So these are called South American land mammal ages, or SALMAs, and are informal biochronological units. Their dates, however, have been changed, some more considerably than others, with new studies and methods allowing updated datings. Unfortunately, the SALMAs are out of date in the paleobiology database, so I had to update the SALMA's maximum and minimum age limits. And in my dataset, I had a lot of fossil occurrences assigned to SALMAs. So some were assigned to SALMAs and some were assigned to international stages. So because SALMAs and international stages don't always correspond well with each other, as you can see, I assigned each fossil a random direct age from within its age span, and then assigned it to my time bins according to that age. I did this 100 times and performed all analysis in all 100 datasets and then took the mean. The end dataset included around 6,500 fossil occurrences from 2,000 localities and around 1,500 papers. But before conducting the analysis, I had to take into account fossil record biases. Basically, not everything that dies becomes a fossil. There are biological biases having to do, for example, with how the body of the organism is composed. So, for example, vertebrates, so animals with bones, gets fossilized better than animals without hard parts. And there are also environmental biases related to the habitat in which the organisms die. For example, lakes generally are better places to die to become a fossil than mountains, where you have erosion, rain, and bones easily accessible to predators. In addition, not all fossils gets discovered and studied. There are geological biases, e.g. magmatic intrusions, erosion, faulting, etc., that can destroy rocks that have fossils inside, or can result in these rocks/fossils never reaching the surface, where we can discover them. Finally, we have anthropogenic biases, as, for example, some places have more money to spend on research than others, and also some groups are more popular and are thus more studied than others, like dinosaurs. So here, to account for these biases through time and latitude, I applied a shareholder quorum subsampling, or SQS. It is a widely applied subsampling approach used to account for uneven sampling in the fossil record by calculating diversity between bins in an objective, frequency-dependent way that is not driven by sampling. I also used Pyrate, a Bayesian approach that has been implemented in a growing number of paleobiological studies and calculates diversification rates, that is speciation rate minus extinction rate, for every 1 million years. And I use the paleo-environmental variables produced by the HAD-CM3 climatic models from Valdez et al. So these are stage-level maps of mean annual precipitation and mean annual temperature. And for each, I calculated the mean per stage for the South American continent. Finally, I use altitude data quantifying Andean uplift from Boschman from 2021. These are also topographic maps, but they are only for the Andean area for different periods in the Cenozoic. So I calculated the mean altitude per time bin throughout the Cenozoic. Finally, I tested the effect of temperature, precipitation, and Andean uplift on the calculated diversity using general least square regressions, or GLS. So let's tackle the first question. What drove diversity change throughout the Cenozoic? So this is extinction rate and speciation rate through time. Small arrows show important rate shifts taking place. Important shifts actually take place in the Neogene only and not in the Paleogene, but especially in the Pliocene and the Pleistocene. The diversification rates initially increase, corresponding to the wave of immigrations reaching South America, and we have already mentioned this, it's the first American biotic interchange, or FABI, just before the disconnection with North America. A late Eocene diversification peak reflects the arrival and radiation of caviomorph rodents and plantarine monkeys coming from Africa. And we also have an Oligocene peak that seems to follow a worldwide faunal turnover event called the Terminal Eocene event, or the Patagonian hinge in South America. Finally, diversification fluctuations happen in the Pliocene and Pleistocene. So this is SQS diversity for all South American eutherian mammals. The curve shows a continuous rise throughout the Paleogene. The exception appears to be in the late Eocene, but the exceptionally low extrapolated diversity for this time interval almost certainly reflects the stage's poor fossil record. Also, diversity fluctuates more in the Neogene. So let's see what happens more specifically for the main eutherian groups in South America. Sanus, or South American native ungulates, diversify until the Oligocene, but are in decline from then on. Xenarthrans show their highest diversity in the late Miocene and Pliocene, but are some of the most affected during the megafaunal extinctions in the Pleistocene. On the contrary, caviomorph rodents increase in diversity at that time, reflecting their high diversity in today's faunas in South America. So let's have a look at the South American mean annual temperature, mean annual precipitation, and Andean uplift. I found no statistically significant correlation between diversity and temperature or precipitation through time. However, I did find that Andean uplift is significantly correlated with eutherian diversity through time. So, due to their complexity, mountains generally provide a broad range of habitats and are thus linked with high diversity. Today, the Andes is one of the largest diversity hotspots worldwide. And in addition, the evolution of the Andes has altered the already existing habitats as well as the climate of the continent. More specifically, Andean uplift has been diachronous. So sections of the mountain range have been subject to different tectonic forces. Throughout the Cenozoic, sea transgressions and lakes have become land, and Andean uplift has also caused the alteration of river flow, like, for example, the appearance of the Amazon River system as we know it today. The lack of recovery of a statistically significant correlation between temperature and precipitation does not necessarily reject climate as a driver for South American eutherian diversity. In fact, the evolution of the Andes greatly impacted the climate of the continent as it worked as a barrier for Pacific humid winds and thus intensified the already ongoing climate aridification taking place in the second half of the Cenozoic. In addition, while I found a positive but non-significant correlation of Andean uplift with Xenarthran and caviomorph diversity, Andean uplift was found to significantly correlate and negatively correlate with Sanu diversity. Sanu diversity is in decline for most of the Cenozoic, as we already said. So Andean uplift seems to be one of the drivers for the Sanu's decline. This could be because of the group's highly unique and specialized morphologies and lifestyles that made it maybe difficult to adapt to all the Andean-related habitat and climate changes. And let's move on to the second question. When did the present-day LBG first appear on South America? So here is SQS diversity for all eutherian mammals through latitude and for different periods in the Cenozoic. In the Oligocene and early Miocene, we find more diversity in higher latitudes than in lower latitudes. This is still the case in the middle and late Miocene, but we also see a diversity peak shifting towards mid-latitudes. So in the Pliocene, we unfortunately don't have enough data in lower latitudes, but in the Pleistocene, we finally see that diversity follows the present-day LBG, with diversity increasing towards the equator. That means that the present-day LBG must have first appeared in the Pliocene or Pleistocene. In other words, in the last 5 million years. This is even more interesting because it coincides with what Marco et al. Found for North America. So potential LBG drivers can be summarized as geographical, historical, and climatic. Geographical drivers refer to higher diversity in the tropics due to greater areal extent there. Although South America holds greater areal extent towards the tropics, this has been the case throughout the last 66 million years, so this cannot explain the emergence of the present-day LBG only in the last 5 million years. And then historical drivers refer to higher diversity in the tropics due to less frequent perturbations and thus longer uninterrupted time periods where evolution can take place. However, both lower and higher latitudes in South America have had perturbations throughout the Cenozoic, so historical drivers seem unlikely to be the main driver. Finally, climate has been considered the main driver of the LBG, with higher diversity in the tropics due to more available niches, and that is due to lower seasonality and higher insolation and productivity overall near the equator. The presence of the modern-day looking LBGs has also been linked with periods of icehouse world. In fact, in the Pliocene to Pleistocene transition, mean annual temperature drops significantly, and mean annual precipitation increases significantly in the continent. And in the Pleistocene, specifically, temperature and precipitation were found to significantly correlate with diversity latitudinally. So, temperature and precipitation seem to be potential important drivers for the appearance of the present-day LBG, at least in South America. The Plio-Pleistocene appearance of the present-day LBG also coincides with the main phases of the Gabi, so the Great American Biotic Interchange. Although Marco et al. Discarded the Gabi as a key driver for the LBG in North America, due to the relatively low number of South American immigrants, this is not the case for South America. In fact, the Gabi was asymmetrical, with disproportionately more North American taxa reaching South America, or at least a greater number of species successfully establishing themselves in the southern landmass. However, the Plio-Pleistocene fossil record of more tropical South America shows that North American mammals did not actually dominate these ecosystems, and their representation was in fact much greater at higher latitudes in South America, with a possible dispersal corridor forming via the Andes Mountains, facilitating the movement of North American immigrants to the central and southernmost parts of the continent. As such, higher South American diversity at lower latitudes, so near the equator, did not result from increased North American immigrants into the tropics, although possible heightened extinction of South American eutherians in southern parts of the continent, maybe because of competition with North American immigrants, likely contributed to the steepening of the latitudinal biodiversity gradient. And yeah, I have been talking a lot, so let's sum up the main points. So what drove diversity throughout the Cenozoic in South America? My results show that it was the evolution of the Andes, and as well as the altering of habitats and climate in the continent. However, Andean uplift also drives the decline of South American native ungulates. Secondly, the second question is, when did the present-day latitudinal biodiversity gradient first appear in South America? And according to the results of this project, it first appeared in the Pliocene or Pleistocene, so the last 5 million years, similarly to that of North America. And we found that precipitation and temperature seem to be the main drivers for the first appearance in South America, at least. And I have put some of the references I've included in my slides. And I guess this talk is also recorded and will be accessible on YouTube if you want to refer back to it. And I want to thank my beautiful collaborators. So Luis, for his amazing help with our scripts and writing, and his continuous support throughout. He's also the founder of the Paleoverse package, and that I'll mention right after this. Juan, who is for his impeccable knowledge on South American mammals and his help with writing and pirate when I most needed it. Alex, for preparing and giving me access to the HAD-CM3 climatic models. Grace for her help with the data entering in the paleobiology database, and Phil and Anjali, my two supervisors, Phil especially for his guidance and support throughout all of this. And of course, nothing could have been done without funding. So thank you, Royal Society of Science. And yes, now I also want to plug in the Paleoverse R package, an amazing project I am part of, and it aims to establish common guidelines for data preparation, and it does that by building versatile functions for the most common requested data preparation issues. Actually, this is the package I wish I had when I was working on the research I just presented to you. It would have saved me so much time and suffering. And I can't recommend to you enough. So honestly, everything that I've done, so if you're working on something similar, this will save you a lot of time. So you can like paleo-rotate fossil occurrences, like make latitudinal bins, bin fossil occurrences into those bins, make spatial bins and bin your occurrences there. You can prepare your data set for temporal analysis, so make time bins and bin fossil occurrences into those time bins using different methods. And then, you know, you can explore your data set with like very simple functions like calculate geographical ranges and calculate temporal ranges, check potential misspellings and check names from like phylogenies. It can also help you like generate pseudo occurrences from temporal range or latitudinal range data. And generally, it offers a variety of like handy functions, like adding a customizable geological scale to your plots and looking up interval names and assigning them to international stage names and ages. Yeah, and to finish, I want to thank so much the PaleoParks organizer for keeping up this amazing seminar series and for offering me this time to talk about my research and show off my animal illustrations. And last but not least, thank you all for listening and sticking until the end. So I guess that's all for me. It's time for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Miranda, for the great talk and the fantastic illustrations.
Thank you.
Paleoverse might be something that that we can talk more about in tea time if postdocs and graduate students are interested. And we already have some questions that have come through. And if,
yes, let's see.
Yeah, and if audience members also have questions, a reminder to drop them to the questions host, who is Remat. But the first question that we received is by Kay Cinder, and I also dropped it in the Zoom chat. The question is isolation the sole cause of high biodiversity in South America, as Australia has been isolated since the Paleocene or earlier? What factors cause South America to be a sweet spot for both high endemism and biodiversity?
So I guess the isolation is one of the biggest reasons for this endemicity, like almost 55 million years of isolation. It's not like a very common thing, like as you mentioned, Australia is also like one of them. So basically South America, Antarctica and Australia were connected, and so they had like a, I guess, more common fauna. But then in the Eocene, South America got separated. Antarctica and Australia were still connected. They got separated just a bit after, I think, or before, I don't remember. But yeah, the isolation was definitely one of the main, I guess, drivers. But also the Andes, again, as I said, one of the biggest mountain chains in the world. I'm sure all of this has also played like an important role for this endemicity. But most importantly, there was a lot of time for the animals and plants to evolve in isolation. Yeah.
Great, thank you for answering. And we have another question that is anonymous. And the question is, Great presentation. Do you think orographic development such as in the Andes would lead to similar diversification results in present day uplift of the Himalayan mountain range?
I don't know much about the Himalayas right now, like what's happening in terms of diversity, but it's not only the Andes that, like the evolution of the Andes, that is linked with a high diversity. It's like mountains in general, I guess. I'm sure there are exceptions, but the evolution of a mountain chain produces new habitats. Like we reach like more altitudes, and so you have differences in temperature, precipitation, and overall, like you have more micro habitats, I guess. So it's not just an Andean evolution thing. So I imagine in the Himalayas as well, although I'm not speaking from like proper knowledge.
No, thank you for answering. We have another question that has come up, and I'm dropping that in the chat as well. It's by K. Sunder, who asks, do climatic fluctuation oscillations in the lower Neogene, such as the Paleo-Enso, have effects on EUTHERIAN diversity? Are they a factor in the extinction of the not ungulates and allied taxa?
Yes. So for the South American, like native ungulates, so we said for the beginning or the end of the Neogene? What was the?
It says in the lower Neogene.
Let me see. I mean, the thing is, the South American native ungulates were already in decline from the Oligocene. So I imagine, well, I found in these results, I found that it's the Andean uplift that actually like drove those changes. But as I said, like Andean uplift also altered the climate of the continent a lot. And that is not necessarily found, no, maybe represented in the paleoenvironmental variables from the climatic models, because these are like made for the whole world. So I'm not sure if it's fine enough a scale to show that the Andean changes. Yeah, but honestly, Andean uplifts was intensified in the Neogene and Pleistocene. So the temperature and precipitation and other climatic changes, I imagine, would also be intensified. So I guess it's a bit of everything for these animals. I think they were just a bit doomed.
Yeah, so we have more questions. This one, so the Jacqueline Silveria just dropped a question in the chat. Did Miocene transgressions affect EUTHERIAN latitudinal gradients given the isolation of the Guyana and Brazilian shields from Patagonia and the overall reduced land surface area?
So I also tested the topography, so like the number of land cells through time and through latitude, and if there was a correlation with eutherian diversity through time and latitude. I didn't find any significant correlations. But again, I don't think those climatic models were like fine enough, like their scale was fine enough to have all of these transgressions. So I'm not sure. Like the only thing I took into account was like the sampling bias. So like places where, well, I guess in South America, but in other places as well, we have like concentrations of like so many localities with so many fossils in some places like Patagonia, and like in Brazil, for example, we don't have a lot of them. But yeah, the only thing I did was basically take this into account using SQS and Pirate. But it would be very interesting to actually somehow like quantify transgressions through latitude and see if there is like a pattern.
Great. So another question that's related to the database. It's an anonymous question, and the question is, what is the resolution of the Paleoverse database, and what parts of the timescales does it have data for?
So is that the paleobiology database or the Paleoverse package?
Wait, I think the question says Paleoverse, but maybe you could talk a little bit both about Paleoverse and the database that you used.
I think they mean paleobiology. Well, Paleoverse is the package that you can use with your own data or like data from the paleobiology database or another one. So yeah, we do have some like example data sets there for you to try, but I think they mean the paleobiology database. So I guess it depends on the group and the place and how much effort has been put in the data entering, because people that enter the data it's people like me or like you guys. So it's depends, like people do it like on their free time. I don't think anyone's main job is entering. So yeah, it depends. For me, it was like stage level. And this is like the best. Sometimes you have direct ages, but I would say stage level is like the best you can hope for. Some occurrences are like coarser scale, but this, like you can't, unfortunately, you can't do much about it because, like, you know, sometimes we don't know. It's like the formation where they are from. We don't have enough like dates to actually know the formation end and start. But yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we have maybe two more questions. One that is again related to the paleo database that you input data for. So the question for that is, what are the different quality control checks done when entering data for the paleo database?
Okay, so I guess this is getting better and better, but basically you have data enterers, which is like me, like PhD students or like master students or above. And then they have like data authorizers above them. So for me, it was my supervisor, but it doesn't have to be your supervisor. If you want to enter data, you can get in contact with one of the people from the paleobiology database. So basically, they will check what you enter, and anyone that has access to enter, like that can be an enterer or an authorizer, etc. They can review and update. So, for example, I spent a lot of time entering data from like papers that were not in the PBDB, but I also spent a lot of time updating the already existing data, which is not like it was not wrong, but a new paper came out making like a better dating for the formation where some of the fossils were. So yeah, so you can go in and like update, and you always put the reference so people can go back to the paper itself. So yeah, but it depends on the group. Some groups are a lot more like comprehensive as data sets in the PBDB, some are not.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work at the fundamental level. Yeah, so we have one more question before we wrap up. And so the question is again by K. Sunder, and he asks, how has furosoid and cibicid, and I'm not a paleobiology person, so I apologize, and Metherian diversity changed due to the Andean uplift? Do you find cases of niche partitioning in EUTHERIAN mammals in response to the American biotic interchanges?
Okay, so I've only looked at EUTHERIAN mammals, so I'm not sure. I don't think anyone has actually like properly studied the bird data and the cibicid data. But for Metatherian diversity, there was like a couple of studies on them, and I think they also used Pirate, like Silvestre et al., like the person that made Pirate. And if I remember correctly, they did find that Andean uplift was one of the main drivers for the Metatherian diversity decline. But for the niche partitioning, I'm not sure, because as part of my PhD, I was supposed to, like after this, I was supposed to do like ecological niche modeling and calculate like the theoretical niches of these animals before, after the Gabi, and like North American emigrants versus South American emigrants. Well, that didn't happen, but it's a very interesting question and, you know, potential study for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, well, great. Thank you, Miranda, for answering all the questions. And again, if there are sort of lingering questions that people would like to ask Miranda, Miranda will be around for tea time. And with that, I will take over the screen. And again, thank you everybody for joining today's seminar. Please fill out the weekly feedback form, which should be in the Zoom chat, so we can learn a bit more about who attended today's seminar. Next week, we have Abdurrahman joining us from India, and he'll be talking about the history of the forest fire in the Western Himalaya and its linkage to climate and human. Please note the change in time compared to the usual time that the seminar happens, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you next week as well. And up next is tea time. It's an informal conversation in a relaxed setting, and question to get things started is, what is your favorite species of EUTHERIAN mammal? But before that, we'll take a quick 2-minute break. Get up, walk around, have a drink of water. I will start the 2-minute clock, and hopefully we'll have many of you back here